Early Duskmourn spoilers brought with them a certain card with a certain string of words that I cannot abide. I really dislike this type of card, this type of mechanic that Wizards has introduced sporadically throughout the years. And as you can see on the page here, I have one of the first versions of that in the Planeswalker emblems. I'll get to the card from Duskmourn in just a moment here. But before that, I'd like to thank everybody for subscribing to the channel. It means a lot. I'd like to get to 2,000 as soon as possible. I just got to keep churning out videos. Luckily, with these videos, I'm able to put them out a little bit quicker than normal, but I gotta get some things in order and start making more videos more frequently. But again, thanks for that. And back to the video. So Planeswalker emblems are uninteractable. You essentially cannot remove them as an opponent. So if somebody, for example, puts an Ob Nixilis Reignited emblem on you, and whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life, you cannot remove that. Luckily, with the absence, if you don't have doubling season, pumping up the Planeswalkers, you actually have to play the Planeswalker, tick it up, get to that ultimate level, and really earn it. So at least these emblems, you have to work for them to some degree slightly. And so, yeah, players get a little salty about that. There's the salt list on the left side. I'll scroll down that in just a moment. But the Planeswalker emblems were, again, one of the first rest of the game type of mechanics. And so we have the rest of the game here. This is really what I'm getting to here. 13 cards in Magic that say rest of the game in their text box. So here we go. Scrolling down, most of these are no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. Honestly, that's not a big deal. That's fine. There's a couple that say goated for the rest of the game. Life of the Party, Johnny Renicus. Those are totally fine. Getting to the real culprits here, Stigma Lasher and the new Duskmourn spoiler, Screaming Nemesis. These cards read, whenever Stigma Lasher deals damage to a player, that player cannot gain life for the rest of the game. Similarly, Screaming Nemesis reads, whenever it is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. Now, why am I upset about this? I don't even have like a dedicated life gain deck. And as you can see, I'm just going to scroll down this for just a moment. Dedicated life gain decks are one of the most popular themes on EDH Rec. In fact, let's see, Artifact or Treasure is number 1. Wow. Artifact is 2. Life gain is 3. This is the 3rd most popular archetype on EDH Rec. That is wild. I did not expect that, but I'm just going to scroll down these for a while I talk. So these 2 cards, Stigma Lasher and especially the new one, Screaming Nemesis, which more people will play probably, these invalidate an entire deck strategy for a particular player at the table. Now, it's not a big deal if somebody's playing like a gain land. I have a onesie-twosie. Oh no, my Loxodon Warhammer one-off card doesn't work anymore. You can usually get over that. Not the end of the world. But if your entire deck is invalidated by a single card, I feel that is against the spirit of, especially Commander. I guess in constructed formats, it's fine. No big deal. Whatever. It's cutthroat. But I'm just not a fan of cards and mechanics that you literally cannot interact with. And so I'm gonna scroll over here for Screaming Nemesis. So here's a few cards that work with it. So here's Stigma Lasher, Screaming Nemesis, cards that work with it. Anything that pings will target and trigger the Screaming Nemesis. So Thornbite Staff and Blasting Station, Goblin Sharpshooter. These are 3 big ones. Viridian Longbow. Any of the Tim effects, Prodigal Sorcerer type cards. These will trigger the Screaming Nemesis, and you can put it on each opponent so nobody else can gain life for the rest of the game. And then voila, you've stamped out any hopes of the life gain players from doing anything. And look, I'm not going to defend the life gain players because it can get annoying a little bit, but rest of the game is wild to me. So here's the pingers. Here are the lure effects. Actually, lures might even be a little bit easier to trigger because you put a single lure effect, Nemesis Mask, on the Screaming Nemesis, and then you attack into somebody with 3 creatures. Each of those creatures deals damage. That's 3 triggers. You target each opponent. And then there's also the one-off effects. Fiery Confluence will hit it 3 times. Pyrohemia, Pestilence, Fire Ants, Blasting Station, I mentioned already. Thornbite, Goblin Sharpshooter. And then in a pinch, Goblin Diplomats, you can make people attack you. And this is fitting imagery for the Screaming Nemesis after you trigger it. And so The difference here with Screaming Nemesis and a card like Rest in Peace is that Rest in Peace is a hate card. It's a Staxy card. It's pretty salty, actually. I think that it might even be on the... Well, it's not on the salt list. It's not on the top 100. It almost should be, in my opinion. But I'm not even going to defend graveyard decks that much. But like Rest in Peace exiles all graveyards when it enters. And then if a card or token we put into a graveyard from anywhere, exiles instead. So this is also a hate piece. However, you have the ability to remove it. You have the ability to play around the Rest in Peace. You do not have the ability to play around Screaming Nemesis. This card, other than removing it when it comes into play, and it also has haste, I guess, which is, I mean, they can just choose not to block. No big deal. They can just not block it. But like, if you have anything that triggers it, you know, you got them for the rest of the game. So Rest in Peace, though, interactable, salty, Staxy, not ideal. Winter Orb, same thing. It's salty and Staxy, but at least you have a sliver of a chance of of killing a Winter Orb or a number of these other cards. Even Armageddon. Armageddon, I think, is somehow less salty than Screaming Nemesis. This is just like, I'm gonna close some of these tabs here. So Armageddon, like I made a video on this. Land destruction, I don't think is the answer to ramp, in my personal opinion, because the ramp player can just build around it. They can play Crucible effects, etc., etc. There's nothing you can do against Screaming Nemesis other than kill it the turn it comes into play. And you don't know when it's coming into play. It's in the opponent's hand. You have no information there. So you have to hold up removal the whole time. And if they're playing red, just hope they don't have this card. And if you're a life game player, you're like, oh crap, Screaming Nemesis. Like, it would be one thing if it's like, oh, they can't gain life until your next turn or for the next 2 turns, or maybe it gives you like half as much life, something like that. But the fact that it's just the whole time, there's nothing you can do about it the rest of the game. Like you basically can't play Magic. It's just so salt inducing. Armageddon's a one-time effect. One-time effects to me, they can be a little bit annoying, but at least you can play for another day with those cards. You can't play for another day with Screaming Nemesis. You can't do it. If you're in a life gain deck, they hit you with this, like a real life gain deck. If you're playing Lathiel, Bounteous Dawn, I mean, you're done. You're done. Like, you just scoop up your pile and go home. Like, you can't play the game at that point. So yeah, I just thought I'd give a little mini rant here. There's some other mechanics that last the rest of the game. There's perpetually cards. These are on Arena. They're, I think, the like alchemy type cards. And so I don't know if it's alchemy, but some of them are. And so yeah, these have like perpetual effects, which really works better on digital clients. These are usually more fair, I would say. I don't have a lot of experience with them. I mostly play paper, but here's an example. Continuous effects can last for the rest of the game if they're not specified. One of the most famous ones, in my opinion, is the riding the Delu horse. And so this is just other examples of things that could last the rest of the game, potentially, that this is less salty than Screaming Nemesis. And honestly, even Armageddon is less salty than Screaming Nemesis to me personally. And I don't even own a life gain deck. So in the comments, what do you guys think? Is Screaming Nemesis a design mistake? Should they not have printed it like this? Do rests of the game text boxes pose a problem for Magic? Should we print any more of these, with the exception of like no maximum hand size? I think that one's probably fine. Goated is also probably fine if it's on a token or something like that. But yeah, again, what do you guys think? What do you think of Screaming Nemesis? Let me know in the comments. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.